Now, not to be dramatic, but I think the Browns might be going to the Super Bowl this year. Hey guys, welcome back to my channel, or if you are new here, then please do me a favour and hit that subscribe button. So, the Browns continue their impressive preseason. They moved to 2-0 with their win against the Eagles. Dominant performance from the defense. Offense looked pretty decent as well. Going to talk all things about the game, what we saw, etc, etc. I'm a day late, I know, of course. I've been at a wedding all weekend. Still pretty hungover, if I'm honest. Everyone knows what it's like as you get older. It gets harder and harder to overcome these hangovers. But I'm, persevering on. Gonna get through this one. Talking about the game, everything we saw, and of course, first and foremost, the story as it was in week one of the preseason, with Shedeur Sanders being the starter, playing the game. This week was, of course, Dillon Gabriel's turn to show us what he had. Definitely a more mixed bag, shall we say, mixed reaction than the Shedeur Sanders performance. The Shedeur Sanders performance was, probably more of a consensus good performance, shall we say. Is that down to the fact that he has a lot of fans, a lot more fans than Dillon Gabriel? Probably, but obviously, a lot more praise for Shedeur Sanders, but that doesn't mean that Dillon Gabriel wasn't good in this game, and, there was actually a lot of good stuff to see from Dillon Gabriel in this game. I was impressed. All the talk, all training camp about him being too small to play in the NFL. Darryl Reuter and all of these people saying that he wasn't an NFL quarterback. I'll be honest, I know it's only one preseason game, but, in the opportunity that he had, he looked like an NFL quarterback out there. Made plays that NFL quarterbacks make, and, I was definitely impressed. There wasn't any touchdowns, of course, finished with the two turnovers as well. Yes, plenty of bad stuff, plenty of stuff to clean up. Shedeur Sanders, same as well. These are guys making their first starts in the NFL. You're, of course, going to see some stuff that you want to clean up. But overall, combine the two performances, really impressive stuff from both rookies. And it gives you a lot of encouragement that these guys, if they have to come in and play this year, would be ready to play. Overall, not just the stat line, but both of them coming in and looking like they belong. We've seen a lot of quarterback. I mean, Deshaun Watson didn't look like he can run an NFL offense, in some of the preseason snaps that he got over the last few years. And, these guys came in and ran, just the operational side of it, ran this offense better than probably anything we saw last year. So that gives you confidence that if any of these two guys have to start games this year, that it's not going to be too much for them, and they will at least give you a base level of it being a functioning NFL offense, shall we say. But Dillon in this game, of course, finishing 13 for 18, 143 yards and one pick, and obviously one fumble as well. Was it counted as his fumble, or was it counted as the running backs? I can't actually remember. But the good, mate, he showed you what the Browns like in him. He showed you what a lot of people, a lot of draft analysts, a lot of draft scouts and all of that stuff liked about him coming out, and that is his, that's his processing, that's his ability to run the offense, that's his ability to keep the chains moving in a variety of different ways. The Browns converted their first 6 third downs in this game. I think he went 4 for 4 on throws in the first 4 third downs as well. So one of them being a 3rd and 10, which is quite hilarious, seeing people post that screenshot saying it's a check down on 3rd and 10. I think some people might just think that anything under 10 yards is a check down, which is of course not the case. But I think he only actually had 2 check downs in this game when you actually go back and look at all of the throws that he made and all of the pass attempts. But as I said, impressive, kept the chains moving, showed you that quick process and speed. The ball looks good coming out. He's actually probably got a stronger arm, shall we say, than a Shedeur Sanders. That doesn't mean he has a better arm. I'm just saying that he's able to properly throw a ball a little bit harder. He's able to kind of, get those balls in those tight windows. Had a really nice throw to Jamari Thrash on 2nd and 15 to get it to, I think, 3rd and 3. Absolutely bulleted that ball in there. He's got a quick release. He can throw that ball hard. He can process well. He shows you all the stuff that you saw in college that you liked about him, and showed you that can translate for him into the NFL. Not saying that that's going to translate into a starting quarterback in the NFL or all of this stuff. Same as I said last week with Shedeur Sanders, this is one preseason game. You're not going to get ahead of yourself. But overall, in the opportunity that he was given, I was impressed with Dylan and the stuff that we saw. The interception, it's one of those, I think people are going to argue about this for as long as they are. Should he have thrown that ball? Probably not. You would have. A veteran quarterback probably doesn't make that throw. They throw that ball away. Everyone else was covered. There was no other throw available. That was the only, even possible throw that you could have got off there. But a veteran quarterback probably throws that away. But he's not a veteran quarterback. This is a rookie quarterback that was drafted in the 3rd round, and then saw the team that drafted him draft another quarterback 2 rounds later, while also having 2 veteran quarterbacks in that room. This is a guy that's trying to prove himself, that's trying to climb this depth chart and try and be this team's starting quarterback. So of course, in his first NFL start, he's probably going to make some plays that he might not make with a bit more experience, and that a veteran quarterback definitely wouldn't make. So would you have liked him to see the throw that away? Yes, but as I just said, the biggest thing from that interception is the fact that you've got the tight end and the receiver just essentially running into each other, just completely closing any space and just eliminating all of the spacing on the field and on those 2 routes. So of course, that's probably the biggest problem of that, was just the miscommunication and kind of how that play just ended up in 2 guys running into the same place. Was it on those 2 guys, or was that just a bad play design? Of course, not trying to get those guys there, but in terms of did it end up going to that? So that's the biggest thing from that. Again, yes, you can nitpick about Dylan. Would you like him to not throw that? Of course, but again, I would have thrown that, so I can't really make too much of an argument for someone making their first start and trying to prove themselves. The fumble probably more so was on Dylan. The footwork was a little bit clunky. He kind of stepped back the wrong way for the kind of angle that he was handing the ball off for the play that they were running. So the footwork was pretty clunky. It didn't look like it was a running back error. It didn't look like the running back kind of bobbled the ball in his hands at all. It kind of looked like Dylan just didn't put it in the right spot. And that the running back wasn't of course able to get a hold of it. So that one probably more so on Dylan. But again, this is a guy making his first start. This is a guy that didn't play under center that much in college, as most of these quarterbacks don't. So this is a guy that's playing, and this play was from under center. So he's got to figure out that footwork and make sure he gets that ball in that running back's stomach. But again, I'm not going to nitpick it too much, as I wouldn't have with Shedeur Sanders if he made any of these plays. I don't have any favourites in this, as I've tried to illustrate as much as I can. Just want to try and evaluate him as fair as I can, and that's me just being honest. So overall, impressed with Dylan. Who was I more impressed with? I'm sure many people want to know that. I was more impressed with Shedeur. Shedeur probably made more NFL level throws in his game. But Dylan, I think, showed a better ability to process, shall we say, and showed that ability for him. But overall, I think Shedeur just kind of showed you a little bit more of those flashes of a potential NFL starter, shall we say, with some of the throws that he made. But that's not an argument for now. This was Dylan's day. He had a great day, and impressed with what I saw from him in his first NFL start. Staying on the offense, Jamari Thrash. His best day of preseason. He looked really good. 4 catches, 43 yards. He was getting open. Dan Orlovsky tweeted that Jamari Thrash should start for the Browns, and as most people probably did the same, people would quote tweeting it like he is going to start. This is probably going to be the Browns starting slot corner. To start the year, it's probably going to be Jerry Jeudy, Ced Tillman, and Jamari Thrash out there, and hopefully we can see a big jump from him this year. Someone that we haven't got to see too much of so far in his NFL career. He's made great strides. We've heard good things about him in training camp, in the joint practices. So to see him have a good game was of course great to see. The defense, of course, is the star of the show, as it's been in the preseason, as it's going to be this whole season. I've been saying for 6 months, probably now, that this defense is going to be good next year. As the months have gone by after the draft, that's only reinforced that. I've been saying for a few weeks now that I believe this is going to be a top 5 defense. And now it's, I think a lot of people are probably opening up more to that as well, and realising that this defence has a potential to be really, really good this year. Just from what we've seen in the preseason from those second and third guys, really impressive stuff. When you add in the starters, when you add in the superstar Myles Garrett, the superstar Denzel Ward, and all the other starters, this has a chance to be one of the best defenses in the NFL. And the biggest part of that is the defensive line, who, once again, even as these secondary guys, they were causing mayhem out there. They were getting a lot of pressure. Isaiah McGuire, one of my crushes last year, someone that he's one of those guys that doesn't pop out in the stat sheet, shall we say. Last year, he's not a guy that's going to get a lot of love from the highlight reels, but he's someone that when you're watching every down of the defense plays, you have a lot of appreciation for him. He's only gotten a lot better as a pass rusher. This is a guy that even as a rookie was a really good run defender, at the edge rush position. So to just get even better and show more signs of improvement as a pass rusher, it's really exciting to see for Isaiah McGuire. Had a really nice sack in this game, and I think he's probably earned that starting role next to Myles this year, shall we say. And Alex Wright will see a lot of snaps as well. A lot of these. Pretty much anyone other than Myles is going to see a lot of rotation, and they're going to get all of those guys in there for as many snaps as they can. But just in terms of the starting defense, I think it will be Isaiah McGuire, just given that he's, as I mentioned, just the run stopping ability he offers well, and every down kind of player. And then Alex Wright, more of that kind of situational pass rusher, and someone that can even play that free tech role as well. And Julian Okora looked really good in this game. 2 games where he's looked positive. He, of course, got the pressure that led to the DTR interception and pick 6. So, overall, again, just really impressive stuff from these guys. What we've seen in preseason, what we've seen in camp, just makes you so excited. And the potential really is limitless when you bring in, as I said, Myles and all of these other guys, and add that to all the good things we've seen from everyone else in this defense. That defensive line is going to be terrifying for opposition offenses. The secondary, again, everyone's going to come away from these as they have in last week, thinking we probably need a bit more secondary depth, and I think they probably will pick up 1 or 2 guys, when the roster cut down start happening, and some of these guys get released. I will be surprised if they don't probably add at least 1 or 2 guys, but I don't think it's the end of the world. I think there's enough guys there to hold up, and as I said, the defensive line, if it's as good as they are, then that of course makes things easier for those DBs as well. And I probably should just give a shout out to Nick Needham, whose mum followed me on Twitter after liking one of my Nick Needham tweets from a while ago. So shout out to Nick Needham's mum for the follow. But couple of other guys that stuck out for me. Luke Weipler, again, continued to impress. He's looked really good this preseason. He's made you feel a lot more comfortable that if Posich does have to miss any games this year and Weipler does have to come in, you're going to feel a lot more confident about that. And even at guard, we saw him play some guard last year. So if one of those guards goes down and he comes in, you're going to feel a lot more confident about that. He's been really impressive. Zach Zinter, who's struggled, shall we say, to say the least, that's probably even putting it lightly, struggled in training camp, hasn't looked great in preseason. He was better in this game. I saw more positive stuff from him, but I still think it's going to be, he has to have a really good week this week. I don't think his roster spot is guaranteed. After some of the performances we've seen from him. DeJuan Jones starting this game and getting quite a lot of snaps was probably a surprise, as we expect him to be the team's starting left tackle. A lot of people might have thought that was maybe an indictment on him. Maybe he was being punished for something, shall we say. Maybe they've not been happy with him in camp, in practices, and they wanted to, basically not teach him a lesson, but, show a point kind of thing. But I don't think that is the case. If that was the case, I think you'd probably see worse body language. I think this is just a young player that's, suffered a couple of injuries, has not been able to play, consistently, put that many, stat that many games on top of each other, and a guy that's as healthy as he's ever been. He's in the best shape that he's ever been in his NFL career. So I think this was just, wanting to get him as many reps as he can and get him ready for the season. I don't think it was anything, sinister, shall we say. But overall, Tevin Jenkins as well looked impressive as well. Struggled a little bit at the start of camp and the start of pre-season, but he's kind of pressed on and looked pretty good, which leads to what I was going to say with the offensive line. I feel a lot better about these this backup unit, shall we say, than I did the last couple of years, and I feel a lot better that if we do inevitably, as we have the last 2 years, have a couple of injuries on that offensive line, those guys behind them can come and hold it down for a couple of games, and not even just having to come in as obviously backups, but we expect this team to have a lot more heavy formations next year, shall we say. We expect them to be in a lot more heavy personnel, so you're going to have more than 5 guys out there sometimes. We remember some of those plays with Nick Chubb, with the Browns having 7 offensive linemen. They've got plenty of big guys there. They've got plenty of good guys in the run blocking game, plenty of big bodies that they can move guys around with. So I'm sure Kevin's going to dial up a lot of stuff with those offensive linemen. And as I said, I feel a lot better about those other guys they'll be bringing in, those kind of 6th, 7th, and 8th guys, than I did the last few years. So that's encouraging stuff, of course. And finally, I suppose the kind of bottom of the roster, hopeful 53 guys. Armani Marshall continuing to look pretty decent. Of course, had a touchdown in this game. I think it would be a cool story for him to make the roster. Quinshon Judkins does face a suspension at all. Then bringing in Armani Marshall maybe to start at least the start of the season, the first few weeks. He's a big guy. He's someone that can kind of take over those more power run and more kind of goal line situations. Travion Williams looked impressive on some of his returns. Gage Laverdame continued to look pretty good in this game. He had a nice return as well, which does make me kind of think that, everyone thinks that, and myself included have said this, that Carter probably is a lock at that wide receiver room because of his return ability and because they want him to be the returner. We haven't really seen him at all, which makes you think that they do plan for him to be on the 53 and to start, not start, but to be that returner. Which not saying that that's not going to be the case. I just don't think that should be the case. And I think if you're going to just give the roster spot to a 32-year-old simply to return, and that means that someone like a Gage Laverdane doesn't make the roster, then I don't think that's a good thing to do. And so I don't think that he should be a lock, and I think he should be considered, with Caden Davis, with Gage Laverdane, as what and Deontay Johnson, of course, as well as those 4 guys probably fighting for those final 2 spots in that wide receiver room, because of course, with the news today of Isaiah Bond signing a 3-year, pretty much, I think, fully guaranteed deal, he's a roster lock. So Judy, Cedric Tillman, Jamari Thrash, Isaiah Bond, they're your 4 locks, shall we say. That's 2 spots, and that's if they go 6 wide receivers for 4 or 5 guys. So of course, see how that plays out. I just don't think that 5th spot should be Carter purely just to return, especially not now with the new rules and everything. You have 2 guys out there. It's all a lot different. I just don't think they should give a roster spot to a 32-year-old wide receiver just to be the returner. I'd like to see one of those younger guys make it ahead of him. But overall, again, dominant performance from the Browns. Dominated them in the joint practices. This Browns defense has looked incredible all week against the Eagles. Even Eagles reporters were saying how hilarious it was that Myles Garrett was just that good and could have had 10 sacks in a row in some of those practices. That just makes it so exciting when you do get Myles Garrett, in this team week 1 with all of these other guys that have impressed in preseason, all of these young guys that have shown you a lot. I mean, I know it's a preseason game, but to hold any team to 88 yards, 55 passing yards, 33 rushing yards, That's pretty impressive, whether it's preseason or not. Browns dominate. That's the recipe this year. They dominated the time of possession, more first down, more yards. That's the recipe to winning games this year. Really good defense, running the ball well, keeping the chains moving, winning the time of possession, winning the turnover battle, which they actually didn't in this game. But that's the recipe for winning this year, and that's what we've been seeing in preseason so far. And hopefully they can continue that into the Rams game this week. This will be the dress rehearsal. This is when we will see some of those starters out there. Especially on offense for at least a series or two. I still don't want to see Miles or Denzel. They don't need to play. Don't need to see either of those two, and maybe a couple of other guys as well. But we're going to see Joe Flacco out there. We're going to see the pretty much majority of the starting offense out there. They're going to get their dress rehearsal. We're going to get the first glimpse of what this offense looks like, the structure of this offense, and what that looks like going forwards, and obviously for week one as well. So really excited for that, of course. Talk about all the news that happens throughout the week leading into that game. But that would do it for me today, guys. Thank you so much for watching. If you do enjoy my content, then please drop this video a like, hit that subscribe button. It's free, but it really, really helps out my channel. You can also check the links in the description to see where you can follow and interact with me on social media. As I always say, I'm trying to build a community of Cleveland Browns fans, and even if that means I only get to talk to one fan a day, I'm happy because I'm talking Browns football with the best fan base in the world. Thanks again for watching, guys. Have an amazing week, but most importantly, go Browns.